Hi, Marina.
How are you?
I'd like to call this regular council meeting to order. I want to acknowledge before we start that the land upon which we are located here at Town Hall and for some of you throughout the community, this is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people, many of whom continue to live in this area and add to the richness of our community life. Madam Clerk, the invocation.
We meet to serve our community and endeavor to be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Let us be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, so that in our deliberations we may display imagination, wisdom, and courage, and the will to do our work for the good of all.
Thank you. In terms of announcements, we've got a lot of items on the agenda here. Obviously, this is the last meeting before Christmas for this council. It's the first regular council meeting of the last year of this term, and so that means we're going to have to really work hard and diligently and keep our noses to the grindstone to get through this final year. We've had an interesting 2 years considering the pandemic and the odd situation that we've all been living in for elected officials who like to shake hands and pat people on the back and the arm and what have you. It's been a great challenge. We can't get close to people. I guess to some residents that's a blessing. But, you know, it's been a challenge. So I'm looking forward to continuing the work with this council and staff. There will be some major changes on our staff in the new year, but I'm sure that we'll continue on in the same great fashion that we have for the last 3 years. I did want to comment most importantly about the storm that we had this past weekend, and once again Mother Nature has reared her head to let us know that that there's one controlling factor in life, in nature, and that's Mother Nature. I want to thank the town staff, the fire department, and Canadian Niagara Power for the work that they did over this weekend, trying to make sure that people were safe, that property to the extent possible was protected, that people had electricity when they needed it. Obviously a great challenge. I know at one time there were 9 areas where trees had fallen on hydro lines or knocked out poles, and at one point I think almost the whole town was without electricity. That was pared down. I know even this morning there were still pockets of individuals who didn't have electricity, but the Canadian Niagara Power crews, along with some of their colleagues from outside the area, were continuing to work on that. I know that town staff worked throughout the night and on the weekend, and were quite intrepid in their efforts, and I want to thank them for being on top of this. And of course the fire department did its usual thing, and I want to thank them as well for their work. The message is clear. Climate change is upon us. Things that we used to do, we're going to have to change. Things that we thought were normal are no longer normal. And so I think later on in the agenda we'll be raising some of those topics and looking at perhaps how we can move forward to better adapt to the climate change that's occurring. We received a report in October of 2020 from Bev Bradnam, assistant to the CAO, so we'll be taking a look at that as well. In terms of addenda, there are 2. There's one with respect to item 8. There are 2 delegations, Doug Swift and David Mcpherson, with respect to the short-term rentals. There's a second addendum that deals with item 9.2. In the consent agenda, there was a correction with respect to one of the figures contained in the report. And under new business, there's a request by Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority for a resolution to be passed by this council to facilitate rehabilitative work at Gonders Flats in the town of Fort Erie. And there's a request for an appointment to the Community Healthcare Services Committee to fill a vacancy, and we'll deal with that under new business. So, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? I have two. One is with respect to PDS 105 for 2021. Since my home is located in one of the areas under consideration for priorities for secondary planning. And the second has to do with CAO 28 LC 2021 with respect to 1799 Niagara Parkway. Since I represent one of the parties involved in that situation, item 1.5 in the Land Committee minutes, 1799 Niagara Parkway. So when we get to, those are both within the consent agenda, so they will have to be, those reports will have to be removed and dealt with separately. And I will hand the chair to, who's the acting? Councillor Zanko? Welcome back, Councillor Zanko. I would have given you a heads up, but I never thought of it. So when we get to those items, I will be asking you to chair the meeting to deal with those. If there are no other pecuniary interests, then we'll go to notice of upcoming public meetings, and this really relates specifically to our budgets. We have the library assessment analysis and general levy operating budget scheduled for February the 2nd, 2022. If necessary, there'll be another meeting on February the 9th relative to budgets, but so far everything has been running along smoothly. Those meetings are open to the public via video teleconference. They start at 6 p.m. and the council members who attend are in the council chambers. Others will attend through video teleconference. The budget bylaws yet to come are January 17th, the water and wastewater budget and rates bylaw, and on February 28th, the general levy budget and general capital budget, presuming everything runs smoothly. That takes us to the regional councillor's report. Good evening, Councillor Encina.
Good evening, Mayor Redekop. It's good to see everybody. Good evening to all councillors, staff, and those watching at home. I will keep my remarks brief. I just wanted to start off just with the changes that are going to happen with our garbage collection during the holiday season. Just so everyone is aware, during the week of December 27th to the 31st, residents of Fort Erie that are living in single-family homes and those living in apartments with 6 units or less are now going to be able to put out 4 bags of garbage on their normal collection day. I guess they're getting generous at the town or at the region, and they're going to, if you have extra stuff to go, they'll take it. During the week of January 10th to the 14th, Niagara Region will be collecting Christmas trees. Please remember to have people remove their decorations and don't put it in a plastic bag because they'll be composting everything. As the mayor spoke to regarding climate change, there's been a lot of discussion and debate with regard to the regional official plan and how it will protect our environment. At the Committee of the Whole meeting, Regional Council was again at a crossroads regarding the natural environment system and the options that were put towards it to us, being that of 3B or 3C, all regarding natural heritage systems. Option 3C was unanimously approved, which would give the best chance for the protection of our environment. It would protect the buffer zones in all areas, preserving our wetlands and systems. Council should know that Mayor Redekop and I pushed and spoke highly of preserving our environment. The matter goes before Regional Council this Thursday, where I have no doubt it will be ratified. Budget deliberations have come to an end at the region. Budget Committee of the Whole has recommended an increase of 2.87%, and this will be going to Regional Council on Thursday for ratification. In order to get to this point, Regional Council dipped into the Taxpayer Relief Fund in order to bring down the initial percentage, which was actually at 4.35%. Later in the agenda, is going to be brought forward the Niagara Transit Consolidation. It's been taken a lot, as Council knows, it's taken a lot of years to get to this point, and I express my sincere thanks to Council in moving forward with this. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of Council and staff for their support during these unprecedented times. This year has been a challenge for everyone. And you are all to be commended on your leadership and guidance during the pandemic. On behalf of my family, I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, and a safe and prosperous New Year. Thank you, Mayor Redekop.
Thank you very much, Councillor Encina, and we accept your Christmas greetings. Any questions of the regional councillor? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, through to Mr. Encina. Mr. Encina, I just got a call this afternoon, so I do apologize. I didn't have a chance to run it by you, so you probably may not have an answer for me tonight. Another question about the lagoon. Someone has said that there's some expansion happening there, that cell 3 is, I don't even know what cell 3 meant, but anyway, he was basically telling me that there's some work going on at the lagoon, expanding it, and I just don't know if you have any information on that.
Through you, Mayor Redekop, I would suggest that's probably the work that was slated to happen. It was a $4 million investment into that. Is that maybe what they're talking about?
If I can continue, I understood that the $3 to $4 million was to remove the sludge. This gentleman was referring to an expansion. So I don't know if one or the two, but if you can get back to me, I would appreciate it.
I will most certainly do that. I don't recall at my conversations with CEO Tripp that there was going to be an expansion, because I talked to quite a bit about that. I will get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Encina, and Merry Christmas to your family as well, and yourself. I was just wondering, you spoke about the buffer zones and the preserving of the environment. I'm just wondering if the region has looked at their commitment to address the flooding areas, such as Shirley Road, that has been an ongoing discussion.
I have brought up with Public Works that area. They did in fact increase the pump sizes that were there. Other than that, I will actually look to see if the NPCA have actually done any of the mapping with regards to that area. I'm not sure, Councillor Butler, if you know if they have or not. But I know the mapping was one of the things that they were going to try and do, was to do all the mapping of the areas. So yeah. I will look in.
I would appreciate that. I'm wondering if you could find out for me if the pump sizes have in fact been replaced, and also if they are looking to do anything to fix the problem. This weekend, obviously, you know, with the storm surge, it was unbearable once again for those neighbors, and it was more than what they have seen in, from what I'm told, 26 years. So anything that you can do to help would be greatly appreciated.
I will look after that for you, and I will get back to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Anyone else? If not, thank you very much, Councillor Encina. We appreciate it. And all the best to you and your family during the holiday season. That then takes us to presentations and delegations. And we have two delegations, as I mentioned, the first of which is Doug Swift, Fortery Preservation Coalition. So I wonder if he could be brought into the meeting, Mr. Davis? Good evening, Mr. Swift.
Good evening, Mayor Redekop. How are we tonight?
We're good. You're ready to go.
Okay. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to appear tonight as a delegation regarding the town's continued review of the short-term rentals. The Fort Erie Community Preservation Coalition, which I am representing, greatly appreciates the opportunity the council provided us to sit down with staff and share our thoughts on how short-term rentals might best be addressed from a land use perspective. We share staff's opinion on the benefits of a comprehensive official plan policy and zoning bylaw provisions to guide the use of short-term rentals as a land use. And we hope that you will accept the recommendations to refer the hiring of a consultant to the deliberation of the 2022 operating budget. The use of short-term rentals is a very serious issue for the whole town. And we look forward to working with you as the matter is explored through the recommended planning process. The process to date has been very confusing and seems unnecessarily rushed for the most part. Most of the reports, it seems, and the recommendations in them from staff have come from the lens of economic development. We're only just now seeing a report from the planning department, which takes into account the entire community's expectations, not just the business community. And we request that you accept the report as part of the next step in the zoning process that we are in the midst of. We are concerned by the speed that the town has taken in its deliberations and actions over the past year. This is a very complex and emotional issue and should be considered at length to get it right the first time in order to avoid any disputes down the road. What council does in their deliberations on the ghost hotel issue will impact Fort Erie for years to come. So we ask, why rush it? The decisions made here on this issue will impact every neighborhood in town. If the citizens of Fort Erie haven't felt the negative impacts brought on by STRs in their neighborhoods, they will, as these commercial enterprises eventually come to their streets as well. The Fort Erie Community Preservation Coalition has grown to represent nearly 650 people and counting. We have done very little outreach, and our ranks are swelling daily, primarily through word of mouth. We are working collaboratively to find the right solution in our hometown, a solution that is right for all of the residents of Fort Erie, not just a handful of opportunistic investors. If you would like more information on the subject or to learn how you can help with our effort, please feel free to reach
Mr. Swift, Mr. Swift.
CPC.
Mr. Swift, you're not permitted to do an advertisement.
I'm just, I'd like to just let people know that there is a group out there that is working on this and how best to reach out to them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight.
You're more than welcome. Do any members of council have any questions of Mr. Swift? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis, the next delegation is David Mcpherson. Could you bring him in, please?
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. McPherson.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. Very much appreciated. I'm gonna just flip this on and speak to. Oops. No, that didn't work. Sorry.
We don't want to be looking at your emails.
No, and I don't want you to. Okay, just give me one sec here because, you know, you need only do this once in a blue moon. You're just not that good at it. Here we go. So, as I said, thanks so much for the opportunity. I'm going to apologize in advance as most of you don't know me, but I'm a long-term business executive, and I have a bad habit of being really direct. So I'm not attempting to hurt anybody's feelings, but I do tend to get to the issue fairly quickly. So apologize in advance. It's nothing personal. So I represent a group of permanent residents, homeowners located in South Coast Village, as you may recall from the last time I was in front of you. Tonight, I specifically want to address and provide some initial feedback on a legal review of short-term rentals in Fort Erie, the report that was published late Thursday. So the bad news is that from the perspective of our group, the report is a disappointment. The report comments on the stakeholder consultation process, claiming consensus on certain issues. And as a participant in that process, I would contest the assertion on consensus that consensus was reached on a number of points of discussion. There certainly was no exchange of ideas as meetings were held individually with each stakeholder. And frankly, my experience would suggest that it was more of a managed discussion than anything else. There was also a little bit of lack of transparency in the process, and issues such as the opportunity to take a look at the underlying legal opinion on the report were denied. You know, one of the potential outcomes of an approach the report suggests would see STRs granted legal non-conforming status in perpetuity in interpretation I heard. And for us, just to be clear, that's unacceptable. And this report really doesn't do anything to address the negative experience currently in South Coast Village when it comes to short-term rentals. So so I like to think, if I'm throwing stones, I'd like to raise some issues that may be on the brighter side. I think this issue, and I agree with Doug Swift, requires significantly more thought. And SDRs in the final analysis are a commercial business, and as such must be subject to a higher level of regulation and zoning than how they are dealt with currently. For me, I'd like to suggest let's stop accepting the notion that SDRs drive economic growth, and my challenge would be prove it, because I haven't seen it. I think you need to consider net economic growth after accounting for the impact of full-time residents and discounting rental income that doesn't stay inside Fort Erie, and that would be a fair bit of it. Let's make sure that when we look at this issue, you look at the impact of the thousands of day visitors who come here in July and August and their impact from an economic perspective. And perhaps let's use the experiences of other municipalities that have dealt with this issue. And the last point I want to talk about is continuing the moratorium on issuances of new licenses. From our perspective, it's critical that the moratorium be left in place while an approach is worked on. Lifting the moratorium would potentially exacerbate the issue of non-conforming properties and operators. It would be prudent for the town to continue to cease issuing licenses in those areas where active consideration is being given to zoning changes, and from my bias perspective, especially those instances where there are restrictive growth covenants on title. Folks, that concludes the remarks I was going to make tonight. I think I promised somebody I'd be about 3 minutes. I hope I kept on, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mcpherson. You were actually 5 minutes, but you were winding up at the beginning, and that took some time. Any members of council have any questions of Mr. Mcpherson? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Mcpherson. What are the actions that other municipalities have taken that you're referring to?
I'm particularly interested in the City of Toronto's approach, and obviously they're using it as the principal residence approach. It goes a little bit beyond that, and I think it's kind of an elegant solution. But I would suggest that perhaps you might look at the revenue opportunity. So I just did some rough math. Toronto applies a 4% municipal accommodation tax on rental income. So if you took a look at Fort Erie and make some assumptions, let's assume there's 250 units being rented at any given time for about 90 days. And this will be out a little bit, and let's assume it's $200 a night. Some are way more than that, some are obviously less, but just pick an average of $200 a night. That's potential tax revenue to the municipality of, I think, about $225,000. They also have a tax that gets applied to organizations such as Airbnb. They're charged a $5,000 fee to get set up, and they're charged $1 per every night of rental that is booked. And that would be far less, but that would still be about $22,500. So in round numbers, the opportunity for new revenue for the town would be about $250,000. Might be worth looking at in terms of a suggestion.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. And then just one final question. You mentioned something about risks. What do you see that the risks are if we don't deal with this issue?
Well, I mean, if you, in the financial papers, Airbnb is actively buying houses now to operate themselves. So potentially, I mean, it's really kind of brilliant on their part. Potentially, they could buy 20 or 30 large houses in Fort Erie and essentially have a networked hotel that wouldn't be subject to the same level of regulation, oversight, and all of those things. So if it doesn't get dealt with, you actually may see where bigger companies move in and string together all kinds of these and then essentially use their operating skills and run them as a hotel collectively. I think that's got a fair level of risk attached to it.
Councillor Butler.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. That's very interesting. I didn't know that, so thank you very much.
Any other
Thank you.
members of council? Thank you very much, Mr. Mcpherson. We appreciate your information.
Thank you.
That then takes us to the consent agenda. Councillor Noyes, you have the resolution, and the items to be removed from the consent agenda are PDS 105 for 2021 and CAO 28/LC 20 for 2021. And they'll need to be dealt with separately.
Okay, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow. The council approves the consent agenda items with the exception of 105-2021 and CAO 28LC 2021 items as recommended.
Are there any questions or comments by members of council? No questions?
I'm surprising you, no, not today.
So I'm looking at two items in correspondence, members of council. The first is from the City of Niagara Falls, which we keep putting it off as we keep having to defer the motion that Councillor Dubanow wants to put forward. I'm wondering whether we shouldn't simply receive that for the time being and at least deal with it. Would you be willing to move that, Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, Your Worship, I'd be happy to move that we receive rather than receive and support the correspondence from the City of Niagara Falls.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor McDermott? Okay, so I'm going to deal with that one right now. So correspondence item 9.2.2A from the City of Niagara Falls is receive as opposed to receive and support. Any questions or comments on that? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. The other item is the one from the City of St. Catharines that deals with the National Child Care Program. And I wonder if anyone is interested in not only receiving that, but receiving and supporting it. Councillor Noyes and Councillor Dubanow. Are there any questions or comments on that item? Councillor Noyes.
Just a comment that, yes, I think it's a very valid and important program that we do support in regards to making childcare more affordable. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm actually glad to see that we're moving in the direction of this. This seems to be an issue that gets punted back and forth by successive federal governments. It seems to be something that comes up during elections as kind of a little, campaign promise, and then it gets thrown to the back burner only to come up as a campaign promise again in a subsequent election. And, if the childcare is essential, it allows individuals to be able to get back into the workforce, contribute to our tax base, take care of their families, and affordable childcare is essential. And believe me, we're lucky here in Fort Erie that our childcare is not insanely expensive, but when you get up into the GTA and some of the larger municipalities, it's stunning how expensive it is just to have someone look after your child. So, Your Worship, I'm very happy to support this as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on that, which is to receive and support the correspondence from the City of Niagara Falls regarding the National Child Care Program? Did I say St. Catharines? I meant St. Catharines. St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, they're all starting to look the same to me. I shouldn't say that. I'm a big fan of both. All those in favor of the amendment? That is carried. Are there any other questions or comments with respect to any of the other items? Mr. Cookett, I had a question, and I'm sorry, I don't know whether there's anyone on staff that might know offhand. I see that there's a possibility that the repainting of 6218 may be deferred. Is that anything that you would have any knowledge of, or could we perhaps follow that up and get some information from Ms. Davies?
I'll have to follow up and get you further information.
Thank you. And I had another question with respect to the Gaming Corporation minutes, and I noticed that there's a resolution in the minutes that authorizes the manager to issue notices for compliance and then suspensions. And I'm just wondering whether that is something that the board needs to approve, or whether that's purely an administrative function. If there isn't compliance, wouldn't the manager automatically follow the procedure and issue the notices to comply, failing which a suspension?
The way to your mayor, the way the policy is currently written is the manager makes a recommendation to the board, and then the board passes a resolution. That is being looked at, and is one of the changes that is being made to the new policy, which is currently in draft form and being reviewed by our solicitor.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, then I'm going to call a question with respect to the consent agenda as amended, lest the item is removed. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Noyes, could you proceed then with, I'm going to have to hand the chair to Councillor Zanko for PDS 105-2021 for you to move the motion, Councillor Noyes. And I'll hand the chair to you, Councillor Zanko.
Again, what number,
Yes.
what number is that again? It's
It's 105-2021 and CAO 28LC 2021.
Well, I can deal, Madam Chair, I can deal with most of CAO 28 LC 2021. I just can't deal with the specific item within those minutes. So perhaps we can deal with those two items separately.
So the first one then is that moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow, the council approves the consent agenda item number PDS 105-2021 neighborhood and secondary plan prioritization.
Thank you. Does any member of council have any questions or comments with regard to the report? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Zanko. I'm looking, and I think these are all great areas to do secondary plans, but in regard to the employment land expansion area, if it's my understanding, each one of these will be done in sequence, like one at a time. Am I correct on that?
Ms. Dolch?
Thank you. Through you to the councillor. They are done in sequence. However, the regional MCR employment and community expansion lands, they would be done by a consultant to deal with the larger area, obviously. Each secondary plan usually takes us about a year to complete. Once the region does finalize their official plan work, we're going to move forward with our official plan amendment, and then we'll have to follow up with secondary plan amendments. And we do not want the employment lands, sitting around too long, waiting for us to catch up on that. So we may come forward at a future date for consultants to do that work, unless it works within our timeframe.
Through you, Councillor Zanko. Thank you. That's what I was hoping for, because I would have wanted to then move up the 3A and 3B to the beginning, so that we could start working on them quickly, but it sounds like that's kind of in the works anyway, so thank you.
Okay, are there any additional questions? I can't see the one side of the chamber, so if Councillor McDermott or Councillor Lubbert, do you have their, I can see who Councillor Lubberts. If Councillor McDermott has his hand up, could someone let me know?
I'm good, okay. Councillor Zanko.
Perfect. I will call the question. All in favor? That carries. Councillor Noyes, could you proceed with CAO 28 LC 2021?
Madam Chair, if I might, with the exception of item 1.15, which deals with 1799 Niagara Parkway.
Yes, with the exception of 1.5.
Sorry. We'll deal with the minutes except for that section, and then they're going to be dealt with separately, right?
Okay, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow that Council approves the consent agenda item CAO-28/LC-2020-21 with the exception of 1.5 regarding Niagara Parkway, as recommended.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? That carries. And Councillor Noyes, if you would proceed with moving section 1.5 now.
Okay, Council approves the consent agenda item CAO 28/LC-2020-21 1.5 Niagara Parkway.
Okay, any questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if we could perhaps postpone this particular recommendation in the minutes until our February 28th council meeting. We've received some correspondence from both property owners regarding this issue, and I understand that the town's recommendation is to remove the trees. I'd like to perhaps have an opportunity, since we've already heard from one property owner, to hear from the other property owner before we make a decision. And with the holidays and everything going on, that's why I picked the February 28th time. I don't think it's going to be too big of an issue, and I don't think you'd be removing any vegetation this time of year anyway. So I'm just wondering if we could postpone this till February 28th to give the other property owner an opportunity to perhaps address council or send us some correspondence regarding this.
Okay, that is on the floor now. Is there any questions with regard to the date of February 28th?
Seconder?
Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor?
Need a second.
I'll second it.
Oh, yes. Do we have a seconder?
Councillor Noyes.
Councillor Noyes? Okay,
Yes.
I will call the question. All in favor? Okay, that carries. And I will hand the chair back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Zanko. That then takes us to reports, and the first item is PDS 106/2021, the famous land use controls and legal review of short-term rentals. report. Councillor Dubanow, you have the resolution.
Yes, I do, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that Council receives for information purposes report number PDS 106-2021 regarding a land use control and legal review of short-term rentals, and further that Council consider the financial implications of hiring a planning consultant to facilitate and process the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment changes needed to impose land use controls on short-term rentals during the 2022 operating budget deliberations.
Thank you. That report is on the floor for any questions or comments. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering if we can postpone this to a later date so that we could have more time to ask questions and do some research. This came to us late Thursday, and with everything that happened over the weekend, it was tough to get a hold of people to ascertain some answers.
So what have you got in mind? The next committee meeting would be January the 10th.
Yeah, I think that would give us ample time to go back and forth with planning to find out some other answers, if that's okay.
So you're suggesting deferring it to January the 10th, 2022?
Yes.
Okay, before I get a seconder on that, I just want clarification on a point. When this matter was last dealt with and we put this over for a report from staff regarding land use plannings, there was a moratorium placed on the issuance of any new licenses pending the resolution of the land use planning matter. I think the wording, though, that appears in the report is until staff had reported. So technically, you've reported. Technically, we haven't resolved the issue. So I'm wondering, from staff's perspective, what's your view about the moratorium? My view would be that until we get this resolved, it continues. But I'm wondering whether we can hear both from Ms. Dolch and then maybe our legal counsel.
Thank you. Through you to His Worship, I will comment first, and then perhaps Ms. Sturton will have to comment. But generally, the resolution that was placed was that that no further short-term rental licenses be issued, but it was pending the receipt of the further report from staff regarding land use controls, which would be this report. So it was, the direction was clear that once this report was received, that further licenses could be issued after the report was received.
So that highlights the unclearness of it, because Ms. Sturton, similar view.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Council. Yes, I think that would also be my view, that the report has been prepared and delivered, even if it is to be deferred for future consideration, it has been received. So that would be my view as well.
So that would create the predicament where we're still dealing with land, just correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Sturton, that creates the predicament where we're still dealing with whether there should be some land use restrictions regarding short-term rentals, and yet we're in a position where we're issuing new licenses in areas that in the future we may very well decide should be free of short-term rentals, but by giving a license, we've recognized the use, therefore we've created another legal non-conforming use, correct?
That is certainly a risk inherent in lifting the moratorium at this time.
Well, I think it's more than a risk. I think it's a reality. You've indicated the rationale for short-term rentals being legal non-conforming uses should we change the zoning on any of those properties going forward. And if we were to lift the moratorium and issue new licenses, we're simply exacerbating that problem. I think that's a certainty, is it not?
I would agree with that, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Butler, before I get a seconder for your motion, I think we need to understand that a deferral without dealing with the moratorium issue creates a situation where there is no moratorium.
That's fine, Your Worship. I agree with you.
Well, if you agree with me, my view is that there should be a continuation of the moratorium. That would.
Yes.
So then I think before we defer this, we need to have a motion that would continue the moratorium until such time as the land use issue has been resolved by council. Councillor McDermott?
Your worship, I have one question with regards to this.
Sure.
So if we put this up tonight, my concern lies with the 217 short-term rental licensees that are coming up January 4th to be able to come and do what they have to do for their year. I don't have trouble with keeping the moratorium on for a short period of time, that we can get our act together with that. But these people who already have licenses that are up for renewal, I think we have got to make sure that they're able to do their business. So how does that affect that? That's my question.
So we have permitted existing license holders to renew their license provided they're in good standing. So as of January the 4th, they can still apply. Those who have licenses now can apply to renew those licenses. The only exception would be that if you have more than 4 bedrooms, you can only renew for 3 bedrooms, a capacity of 8. Ms. Sturton, is that correct?
Yes, I would agree with that, Your Worship.
Okay.
Thank you, worship.
Okay. So any other, Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Just a clarification, just on what you're first just mentioning about the good standing. I had an opportunity of talking to Ms. Dolce, and I don't know if it's this report or the next report, but they're all kind of combined, is that there was no good standing in regards to, that was included in the grandfathering of licensing from an existing license to the following year, that did not, that's not in there. So that good standing basically means that if they've complied with all the rules, I know that there was a long discussion about 5 demerit points, and that if there's more than 5 demerit points, it would no longer be in good standing. But the my understanding is that that's not included in the grandfathering of existing short-term rentals. And I could be corrected on that, but because there's 3 different reports that are coming before us, all with short-term rentals.
Yeah, there's 2 bylaws on our agenda plus this report. Ms. Sturton, can you comment on that?
My preference, Your Worship, would be to defer to Ms. Dolce on the practical implications arising from the license renewal, simply because I think she'll be more familiar with the process than I am.
Of course, Ms. Dolce.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the councillor.
Oh, you just...
I apologize. I must have just muted, so I'll start again. I did have an opportunity to speak with Ms. Brummett today on the good standing and the 5 demerit point issue. And she did clarify for me that generally the discussion of the 5 demerit points or less was only relevant to option 1. So the option that was chosen is my understanding that that they have to just comply at this point with the rules, but there's no mention of good standing at this point in the amended bylaw. There's no definition of that at this point in time. And I don't know if Ms. Brummett's available to speak on it if you needed further clarification, but that's what I was advised of today.
Right, Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. And again, it was a long discussion. It was a late night for that, and I'm surprised that the good standing is not included in the grandfathering in, which basically says if you have 14 demerit points, you are still considered in good standing. You still get grandfathered in. And I was hoping that we would kind of work that out in some of the discussion tonight, because I think I thought the 5 demerit points would have followed through with any of the A, B, or C's that we picked. But I understand now that it didn't. So I don't know if we can deal with that now, or that whether if this gets deferred, all of that gets deferred.
Well, I believe that your point would be dealt with under the bylaw that we have later on the agenda. It's Bylaw 154, I think, is where you would be directing that. That's for the renewal of licenses.
Okay, that's fine. Then I just wanted to make sure it's not kind of in here someplace repeated that, that they get automatically grandfathered in if they currently have a license.
Well, they're given the opportunity to get a license as long as they're complying with the rules. So that's in the bylaw 154. It's paragraph 4.7. But if you wanted to deal with amending that, that's I guess where you would raise the issue. Okay. I thought I heard the clerk about to reprimand me, but.
Well, we'll all wait till till bylaw 154 then.
Okay.
For that.
So then, Councillor Butler, I think you're of a view that although the report before us should be deferred to January the 10th, the moratorium should continue until such time as the zoning issue has been resolved by council.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that motion, Councillor McDermott? So that would be an amendment to, so let me just get back here. That would be an amendment to the report. And then, I'm sorry, we've got a mover and a seconder. Are there any questions or comments with respect to the extension of the moratorium? Councillor Dubanow?
Just a quick comment and just to extend my appreciation for the explanation. I had a similar concern to Councillor McDermott regarding the existing short-term operators who would be renewing for 2022, and as long as they aren't held back by the moratorium, I'm okay supporting this for new entrants.
Right. At the time we dealt with this, it was clear that the intention was anyone who had a license or anyone who had made an application for a license at that time, which I think was, I don't know, September, could proceed. Councillor Noyes?
Just in regard to that, there's also, I think we probably all received an email regarding some of the rules that we have put in place in regards to inspections and things like that, that they're, the email that I received, a valid question was, okay, what inspections and what do they entail and what's the timeline? Would that also be in, like the question, they wanted some answers, basically, because January 1st, I guess, or January 4th, they can start renewing, and they have to, if they have to, for an application to be complete, they have to do A, B, and C. And there was a question, okay, what is A, what is B, and what is C?
Well, right now we're dealing with whether there should be a moratorium, so let's deal with that, and then we're going to come to your question shortly. Is there any other questions about the extension of the moratorium? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. So, Madam Clerk, just to be clear, Councillor Butler's next motion would be to defer the report to January the 10th. That's not going to jeopardize the moratorium that we've just extended, is it?
I don't believe so, Your Worship, because you've taken care of that already.
Okay, so before I go back to you, Councillor Butler, to defer this, I just want to get some clarity. Councillor Noyes had raised the issue about the inspections and what the status of that is, and Mr. Cookett can provide us with some information.
Through your worship to the councillor, we had many discussions internally on how we're going to do the inspections. These are both the fire inspections and the building inspections. And what we concluded is that we would do annual inspections. So it wasn't or isn't an inspection that has to be done to get your license. That throughout the year, some point throughout the year, we would be doing those inspections, so it wouldn't hold up the license.
That's good to hear, and I'm hoping that those people who are concerned get relayed that information.
That's information that we need to make sure we get out to the short-term rental community so that they're aware of that. So, Ms. Dolch, can you pass that on to Ms. Grummett so that she can do that?
I will. I believe she was planning on putting something out once we had established what was going to be inspected as well. So they had some kind of parameters around that.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, back to you, Councillor Butler, to defer the report to January the 10th, 2022. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor McDermott? There are no questions with respect to the motion to defer, with the exception of timing. Does anybody have any questions about timing? If not, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion to defer? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to new business and inquiries, and Councillor McDermott, you have the first resolution relative to Niagara Region Transit. Resolution number 3.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubanow, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Port Erie consents to the passage of Bylaw number 2021-96 of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, being a bylaw to provide Niagara Region with the exclusive authority to establish, operate, and maintain a consolidated passenger transportation system for the Niagara Region.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to this? Councillor Dubanow.
Just a quick comment, Your Worship, just with respect to my previous comments. I'm fully in favor of this. I'm glad we're moving forward. It looks like we've got, at least so far, 3 out of 4 our municipalities are supportive of this. I'm feeling confident that we're going to reach the triple majority, and that this is going to be an excellent thing for Niagara to help move us forward into the future. I've been defending my viewpoint on that with a few individuals across the region. It's something I do feel strongly about, though. It's something I even mentioned during the campaign leading to council, that this was something that I was looking forward to have happen. So I'm happy to second this, and I will be voting in the affirmative with about as much happiness as I can, Your Worship. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Councillor Dubanow, you can take comfort when you're dealing with your friends that you are right. Any other questions or comments? If none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the resolution? Opposed? That is carried. Councillor Dubanow, you have the next resolution.
I do, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that Council accepts the resignation of Christopher M. Nutt from the Community Gaming Development Corporation, and further, that Council that Council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, again, Your Worship, I just want to wish Chris Nutt all the best. He was a valuable addition to the board. He will be missed, and my understanding is it's moving on with his life and new opportunities, and that I wish him all the best. And I'm going to have to reach out to him and tell him that personally in the next little bit before he leaves. Anyway, thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much for those comments. All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. Then Councillor Dubanow, you have the next resolution.
Yes, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that Council appoints Margot Pinder to the Community Gaming Development Corporation for the period ending November 14th, 2022.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Madam Clerk, I note that the application from Ms. Pinder, I think, was dated in February of 2020. And I'm just wondering, I think there was maybe a vacancy, and maybe that's when there was, if not, do we have any knowledge as to where that would have come from if there wasn't a vacancy requested?
Your Worship, yes. People quite often will send in applications whether there's a vacancy or not, so that they're on file. And if it has been, not recent, we will contact them and ask them if they're still interested and if they still wish to stand for the position.
Is there a provision in the bylaw that deals with this that would involve the gaming corporation advertising other than the municipality for new board members? Okay. And is there a reason why we wouldn't advertise as we typically would do?
We don't typically do that. We do that at the beginning of the term or just before the beginning of the term of the new council. That's when we do a town-wide advertisement. Following that, when we have a vacancy, we always encourage the committee members to find someone to replace because they have a better idea of who is available and who would be a good fit. In this case, the other ones that we had on file from 2018 were not permitted to apply because they, in accordance with bylaw number 1 of the Gaming Corporation, they had held their seats for 2 consecutive terms. And the only way that any one of them could have been appointed is if there wasn't someone else from the general public who had applied.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? If none, all those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to Councillor McDermott, resolution number 6.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubanow, that Council accepts the resignation of Heather Patterson, Niagara Health System Representative from the Community Healthcare Services Committee, and further that Council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the procedural bylaw.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to Councillor Zanko and the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee.
Yes, thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that Council appoints Tristan S. Jargelio, Enza Rose Wybraniak, Molly C.C. Morin to the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee for a period ending in November 14th, 2022.
Are there any questions or comments? I just want to say that the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee is now, I think, up to 11 new members. And with the addition of these 3, presuming that this resolution passes, they're all very eager. And we had a meeting this afternoon prior to this meeting. And I wish they weren't so challenging. They asked the mayor a lot of tough questions. But I did encourage them to raise questions and raise issues of interest to them because we as a council are relying on hearing from them because the things that we do will have a greater impact on their lives than it will on our own, ironically. So this looks like a very engaged group, and I'm quite pleased. There are a couple of holdovers from before. Most of the rest have graduated high school, but the 2 that are left over are very experienced, and they were very involved in activities before. So without further ado, are there any questions or comments about these nominees? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, Your Worship. Just a comment. I happened to stop in at Town Hall to meet with some staff prior to the council meeting tonight, and I did see that meeting was underway in Boardroom 1, and I just want to say it was nice to see them back, you know, to get that input, see these things moving on. It was nice to see them, you know, and to move forward with that because we value their input and we value what they contribute, and I'm glad they're back, and I'm glad to see so many young individuals in our community eager to join this committee.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to Councillor Butler and the resolution regarding Enbridge's generosity.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that the town of Fort Erie would like to thank Enbridge for their donation of $5,000 to aid with the purchase of training materials for the Fort Erie Fire Department through their Safe Community Project Assist program, and is grateful for this generous contribution.
Thank you very much. Fire Chief, did you want to make any comment with respect to this since this benefits your volunteers?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just would also like to thank Enbridge. They are very good in the community. Last year, we were the recipients, or one of the recipients, for their Project Zero smoke fire alarm donation. So we're very, very appreciative for Enbridge, not only for grants like this, but they also offer training to our volunteers on emergency response. So we're very appreciative for what they've done for us.
Thank you, and I know that Council is also appreciative because it assists our volunteers, which really are, as you've heard me say before, a jewel in the town of Fort Erie's crown. Any other members have any comments? If not, all those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. That takes us back to Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubanow, that the Municipal Council of the Corporation of the Town of Port Erie accepts the non-repayable contribution to the Town of Port Erie from the Canada Community Revitalization Fund in an amount up to $750,000 upon the terms and conditions of a contribution agreement in support of the town's project to improve Jarvis Street, and further that council authorizes the mayor and clerk to execute the contribution agreement with Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Canada as represented by the minister responsible for Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, and further that a bylaw be submitted to council authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute the said contribution.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor McDermott.
Happy to see this, quite obviously, and the people of that inhabit Jarvis Street, both the people that are living in apartments and running businesses are very appreciative of this and the town's support. So I haven't heard anything negative about this at this point, so I'm just thrilled that the government saw fit to fund this program.
I understand one of the conditions, Councillor McDermott, is that you wield a shovel during the excavation of Jarvis Street. Is that true?
I don't believe I'm going to be doing that.
Okay. I guess we best let the federal government know. If there are no other questions or comments, all those in favor of the resolution? And that is carried. And of course, this is a capital project that's on our 2022 work schedule. That takes us to other new business or inquiries. Sorry. The addendum, the famous addendum. Yes. Yes, and I don't have in my... Oh, Councillor Noyes, that's the big resolution for Councillor Noyes relative to the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority and Gonders Flats. Such a cool place. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow. Whereas the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, the MPCA, serves to further the conservation, restoration, development, and management of natural resources in the Niagara Peninsula watersheds pursuant to the Conservation Authorities Act, and whereas the NPCA often collaborates with its municipal partners, government and non-government organizations, and the community to deliver on mutual goals and outcomes such as ecosystem restoration, and whereas the MPCA and Niagara Parks Commission have partnered to restore Gonder Flats wetland, which is owned by the Niagara Parks Commission and situated along the Niagara River in the town of Fort Erie, and whereas the Gonders Flats wetland restoration project has been approved by the Niagara Parks Commission Properties and Infrastructure Committee, and whereas the MPCA has secured funding from several organizations and are pursuing additional funding opportunities to implement the Gonders Flat wetland restoration project, and whereas a letter of support from the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie is required from some funding sources such as the Intact Foundation Municipal Climate Resiliency Grant, and whereas a letter of support from the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie does not commit the town to any funding contributions. Now therefore it be resolved that the Municipal Council of the Town of Fort Erie supports the Gonder Flats Wetland Restoration Project to be implemented by the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority in collaboration with other partners.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? This is, for the public that doesn't know, this is the area at the bottom of Netherby Road, which was significantly affected by the emerald ash borer. Virtually all of the trees in that vicinity, with the exception of a few, were ash trees, and they've all been cleared out. So this is an opportunity for that area to be regenerated, and it's a great partnership for a great project that will help us to address climate issues. If there are no questions or comments, all those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. And then Councillor McDermott, you have a resolution regarding the Community Healthcare Services Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubanow, that council appoints Mary Jane Johnson to the Community Health Care Services Committee as the Niagara Health System representative for the period ending November 14th, 2020.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor of the resolution? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes me to any other inquiries or items of new business from members of council, I think. Okay. Anyone? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I had an email sent to me. I did not have a chance. I don't know if everybody received it. And I haven't had a chance to ask the person sending it to me if I could pass it on, but I thought she presented a very good suggestion that I wanted to bring up. It had to do with the recent storm and Fortis, Ontario, and she made a really good suggestion how to improve the system for implementation, online reporting system for outages. And she basically was talking about a detailed system outage map where basically someone could on their computer or their cell phone look to see which areas are out and which ones aren't. Because I think she was commenting that now you call it in and you could be on a queue and you could wait and never really get through, or not sure if the recording actually took your message or not. So she had some really good suggestions in regards to improving the communication with the residents, the consumers, and Fortis Ontario to basically look at the technology that we can use now and really improve the communication.
She's essentially referring to some type of app that could be utilized by residents and could be, I guess, handled digitally and whatever. Councillor?
Yes, she did. I can, with her permission, I'll forward her her email to council. She just said she sent it to me and corporate, and I don't quite know what she means by corporate, whether she meant the council or she's talking about Fortis Ontario itself. So I'm not sure.
I think what we would do, if you would forward that, I would ask the CAO to pass that on to Fortis, because I'm sure that they're interested in anything that will assist them in managing these power outages that occur fairly regularly with the storms and all the trees that we have. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, just to touch on that, Your Worship, Councillor Noyes, the email she received actually brings up a really good point, because there are other hydro utilities, even here in Niagara, who use apps and mapping systems to actually plot out where power outages occur. I believe I can't recall what Horizon up in St. Catharines is called now, that they've amalgamated with other utilities, but they do a mapping system. Hydro One as well does in the western part of the region, and certainly if Canadian Niagara Power could do something like that, I think it would be beneficial for the community and would certainly help with cutting down the calls. So it's possible, and hopefully we can give them that nudge to kind of move in that direction.
Councillor Noyes.
Just a comment. She actually did comment on one here. She basically says, in the Niagara region yesterday, and found a lovely map from Niagara Peninsula Energy that does exactly what I would expect of a utility company to do in 2021. So, yeah, it is out there, and I think just encouraging them. But I will follow up with the CAO and also with the writer of the email.
Yeah, and if you could forward a copy of the email to members of council when you send it to Mr. Cookett, that'd be great.
Yeah, I will check with her, and I doubt there would be any problem with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other items? Councillor Butler, and then Councillor Zanko.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to raise the issue about the storm that took place over the weekend and the claims that this is going to be more apparent in the years to come. And I know that yourself, Your Worship, and members of council and staff have been talking about climate change and what is it that we can do to change. And I know as recent as 2019, the mayor had put in a resolution and a motion that was passed by council unanimously with respect to some changes. But I think now that we see extreme weather patterns, we need to look at more aggressive ways of combating climate change. And so I'm hoping that council has some suggestions as well, and that staff and council can work together in putting together a more aggressive plan.
We did, Councillor Butler, receive a report following that resolution that you've referred to, which I made in December of 2019 after the big Halloween storm. We did receive a report from staff in October of 2020, and so there certainly is the basis and the foundation for council to move forward with some actions with respect to how we address these ever more frequent extreme weather events, which are having, in some cases, devastating impact. So that, at one point you had indicated you might bring forward a notice of motion. You can do that. I'm happy to work with you on that. So make sure that you mention that when we get to item number 13, notices of motion. And I've had a brief opportunity to speak with Mr. Cookett about this, and the advisability that we should be contemplating putting some money into the operating budget, maybe to be paid for from reserves for some study as to how we move this forward. The report from October of 2020, it did make reference specifically to the city of Barrie, which undertook such an exercise, and they're in a very similar situation as we are in terms of some of the climate change issues they're dealing with. So we can circulate that report as well to members of council, but I'll let you bring the notice of motion under item number 13. Presumably that would be returnable in January, and then we'll go from there. Anything further, Councillor Butler?
No, thank you. That was it. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Dolch. I had a resident contact me today with regard to rabies shots for their animal. Now, this resident has a dog, and she's saying that she's never had to get her dog vaccinated for rabies in the past, but due to our new animal control bylaw, the SPCA will not issue her a license without proof of vaccine. Now, I was under the impression that all dogs needed to have a rabies vaccine in the past and current. So I would just like some clarification on that. And again, I just received that call today, so I wasn't able to give you a heads up, but if you could maybe look into that.
Ms. Dolch, do you have any knowledge of this?
I would have to look into that and get back to you, but I can provide you some further information once I have a chance to talk to them further.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking that you'd have a dog and you wouldn't have a rabies shot. I would think that would be good for your dog, not to mention people that might be bitten by your dog. Not that your dog should be biting people, but when they have rabies, that's one of the things that they do. Their behavior is altered. So we'll wait to hear from Ms. Dolch. You can get that information, and that will be the subject of a response to council in January.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Anyone else? So Ms. Dolch, since we're with you, I had a question about 477 Ridge Road and how we're making out with that. This is the Zavitz property that has caused much consternation, at least in the mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're working through the direction that council provided to us to deal with the repair of that facility. So we're just working with the structural engineer at this point to get guidance on how to do that, how to best do that at this point.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Cookett, if I might, during the storm, I noticed that there were 9 areas where trees had fallen on hydro lines or knocked over hydro poles in the town of Fort Erie. And I'm just wondering if that's a reflection of our efforts in terms of removing dead dead ash trees as a result of emerald ash borer.
It's not likely, Your Worship. It's those trees. Let me just back up. So our ash tree removal program first addressed all the trees within road allowances to make sure that we got rid of that risk, and we've taken care of those risks, and then later moved on to parks. So it's very unlikely that those trees that took down those lines were ash trees. It's likely that one of two things: they're not ash trees, or they're ash trees that are not on town property.
Okay. And is this something that, since you're going to be contacting officials from Fortis, is this something you could ask them about, see what their views are? They have a pretty aggressive tree clearing program, and I'm wondering if they've got any comments with respect to this as well.
I'd be happy to ask them.
Thank you. And okay, I was going to ask some questions about the climate change and some of the initiatives that could be considered, but I think I'll leave that to the notice of motion and the report that, or the motion that will come forward in January, and I can make some comments there. I think there's a number of things that we could probably be looking at in policies, some of which are referred to in this report from October of 2020, some of which I think, in fact, Mr. Walsh, I could ask you. I understand that the town in the past has looked at alternate sources of energy for our fleet. At the time, the technology wasn't really that particularly good, but any prospects now of maybe looking at a more fuel efficient, a less carbon generated source for fueling our fleet?
Mr. Mayor, our larger fleet, our dump trucks and such run primarily on diesel fuel. It's pretty difficult to replace that. Biodiesel is a maturing technology. It's something we can look at certainly in the future. With respect to the smaller fleet, the pickup trucks and passenger vehicles we run, I think we're always looking for better technology in that. We did experiment with a couple of hybrid vehicles a number of years ago. As you state, the technology wasn't quite mature at the time, we don't think. It is getting better now. We're also looking at a different fleet acquisition strategy that would improve mileage throughout the smaller fleet. With respect to electrical vehicles, I don't think the availability nor the price point is quite what suits our needs right now, but natural gas is something we can always look into. The big trouble there is the cost of converting vehicles, but we're always looking to be better for the environment if it's in a cost-effective way.
Yeah, I had more in mind maybe electricity. I understand that you may have had some contact with some organization that was trying to encourage municipal fleets to smaller vehicles to switch over to electricity.
No, you and I spoke about a different acquisition policy. Right now, electrical vehicles are very hard to source. There aren't that many out there, pure electrical vehicles, and the price is, in my opinion, outrageous right now. I think over the next few years, we will see the price drop and more suitable vehicles become available.
Okay. Are there any other questions by members of council? If not, then we're going to move on. We have a motion from Councillor Dubanow that is going to be postponed to the January 17th, 2022 meeting, which takes us to notices of motion. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I would like to bring a notice of motion with respect to climate change actions.
Okay. And that's going to be returnable in January?
Yes, it will be.
So that'd be January the 17th, which is the next regular council meeting.
Yes.
Are there any other notices of motion? Okay. That then takes us to consideration of bylaws. Are there any bylaws that anyone wishes removed from the package? If not, I'm sorry, Councillor Noyes?
The bylaw number 154, 2021.
Okay. Any others? All right, Councillor Butler, you have the resolution for first and second reading of the bylaw package. Bylaw 15421 should be left out of this initial resolution.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that the bylaw package containing 148-2021 to authorize the execution of an assumption agreement for South Coast Village Phase 2, Block 2 with Mars Homes Crystal Beach, Inc., Dan Gabriel. 149-2021 to adopt a preliminary capital budget for the town of Fort Erie for the year 2022. 150-2021 to waive business licensing fees for 2022, excluding short-term rentals. 151-2021 to appoint James McCaffrey as a municipal law enforcement officer and coordinator, law enforcement for the Corporation of the Town of Fort Erie, and to repeal bylaw number 69-2020. 152-2021 to amend Parks and Beaches bylaw number 119-03, Dogs in Parks. 153-2021 to amend Animal bylaw number 73-2021, Dogs in Parks. 155-2021 to amend Fees and Charges bylaw number 40-09 as amended, short-term rental license fees. 156-2021 to authorize the entry into a contribution agreement with Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Canada as represented by the Minister responsible for Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario Jarvis Street Improvements Project. 157-2021 to amend bylaw number 204-07 Heritage Tax Rebate Program. 158-2021 to amend the Fort Erie Senior Citizens Advisory Committee bylaw number 23-10 as amended, composition. 159-2021 to exempt certain lots in Plan 59M-488 from part lot control, Block 41, Viking Street, Peacebridge Village Subdivision, Ashton Homes, Western Limited, Ethan Leman. 160-2021 to exempt certain lots in Plan 59M-488 from part lot control, Block 43, Viking Street, Peacebridge Village Subdivision, Ashton Homes, Western Limited, Ethan Leman. 161-2021 to deem part of a certain registered plan of subdivision not to be a registered plan of subdivision. 115 Ridgeway Road, Sandy Shore Homes, Inc., Belinda Butler, owner. 162-2021 to amend zoning bylaw number 129-90 as amended, part lot 196, lot 197, plan 511 Idlewild Street, PLW, Planning and Environmental Consulting, Lee White, agent David Smith, and Charlene Smith, owners, is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That bylaw package as amended is on the floor for any questions or comments. There being none, Councillor Noyes, would you read the resolution for third? Oh, you had a question? See, you let me down before I deliberately looked at you and you didn't have a question. Now I look away and you have a question. This is, go ahead. I should have known better. That's on me.
I'm just checking your peripheral vision, that's all. I just wanted to comment on 152 and 153 in regards to the amending the Parks and Beaches bylaw. I'm very glad for council support. I do understand that this is not the only passive park in town, and I have had some inquiries about other parks, and I'm hoping that that in the near future, particularly the passive parks, we have a bylaw that's going to basically allow people to walk their dogs in passive parks until we can get the whole dog and parks bylaw done for those that for those parks that have activities in them. But I think passive parks, I think, would be an easy thing to pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Noyes. Any other councillors? Could you then proceed to third and final reading of the amended bylaw package, please?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moving myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow that bylaws 148-2021, 149-2021, 150, 2021, 151, 2021, 152, 2021, 153, 2021, 155, I think I'm 2021, 156, 2021, 157, 2021, 158, 2021, 159, 2021, 160, 2021, 161, 2021, and 162, 2021 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? We're good, Councillor Noyes? We're good? Okay. If there are no questions or comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the amended package? That is carried. So I'll go back to Councillor Butler for first and second reading of bylaw number 154, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko. That the bylaw package containing 154-2021 to amend business licensing bylaw 217-05 as amended short-term rentals.
Is given first and second reading.
Yes, I'm sorry, that's on the flip page. Is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? Sorry. Yeah, I'm calling the question for first and second reading, so we put that on the floor. Everybody votes on it to get it on the floor. Okay? So that's carried. So it's now on the floor. Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. One thing I want to start off with is the definitions, and we just wondering if we should actually include in the definitions what we decided what good standing meant in regard to the number of demerit points. That goes on to my next, and then on page 6, 4.7. And Ms. Grummett is correct. It doesn't say anything about that. It didn't get in this. This must not have been the one that it was referring to, but it just talks about the grandfathering in for the 250 in any given year, with the current license holders being provided the first opportunity to renew a license by March 31st of the following year, provided a license holder has complied with all the rules during the previous year. And then one of the other ones that was talking about are in good standing, and I think we had the discussion about the good standing, what does that mean? But we had a discussion in regards to that if they had, let's say, I think it's 15, they lose their license, but if it was 14, would they not? I'm not going to relive that whole discussion, but I thought we had come to an understanding that if they had 5 demerit points, or more than 5 demerit points, they would no longer be automatically grandfathered in.
So the wording of this paragraph, I see that Ms. Sturton is gone, unfortunately. The wording of this says that the license holder has complied with all rules during the previous year. If the license holder didn't comply with a rule, my view is that doesn't permit that person any special privilege. This was really designed, when we discussed it, this paragraph was designed to give those who had a license the first crack at a license, particularly if we got to, if and when the moratorium is lifted and 250 becomes the number. This really gives those who have a license the ability to apply for a license in priority to somebody who doesn't have a license. But if they haven't complied with all the rules, my view is that doesn't give them any special privilege for a renewal of the license. That may be something different than what you're driving at. I'm not sure, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. That was part of the discussion. My understanding is the same as your understanding, but I understand from, I think it was Ms. Grummett, when she weighed in, she said, no, just because they have demerit points doesn't mean they haven't followed the, if they still have a license and the demerit points hasn't reached 15, then they are still considered within the rules. That's where the long discussion happened, saying, well, I don't think if somebody has 14 demerit points, they should just be automatically grandfathered in. And then we had the good stand. Another one had a good standing clause, and anyway, I don't know if Kira is able to do this, or if Ms. Grummett is available. My understanding is that it doesn't matter how many demerit points, whether it's, at this point, whether it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they're grandfathered in. And the question was, we didn't think, let's say your understanding, my understanding was correct, that we didn't think that 2 demerit points would say that they couldn't be grandfathered in because somebody left the garbage lid off the can and somebody reported it. So that's where we had a long discussion about 5 or more, or more than 5. And that somehow is not in here.
Yeah, that had to do with a different aspect of a report, and it had to do with one of the options that council didn't adopt. But there is a distinction between the words good standing and the words has complied with all rules. There's a distinction. If you've complied with all the rules, you're in good standing. But you could be in good standing even if you haven't complied with all the rules for the previous year, as long as you're under 15 demerit points. But this, to me, seems to be a tighter restriction, has complied with all rules. Now, we don't have, well, you can shake your head.
Oh, no,
I'm just pointing out to you that there is a distinction between those two. Now, Madam Clerk, how do you want to deal with this? I don't think we can effectively defer the bylaw because people need to know January 4th what they need. And so have you any suggestions on how you think we might deal with this?
Yes, Your Worship. I agree with you. I wouldn't recommend postponing this because these fees do come into force, or these terms do come into force in effect on January 4th. If I could just clarify the definition that was proposed for in good standing related to option number 1. Option number 1 was not carried. What was actually moved is what you see in the bylaw right now.
And can you tell?
If an amendment needs to be made, then it needs to be moved.
Can you refresh our memory as to what option 1 was that wasn't adopted?
Can you just give me a moment, please?
Sure.
Okay, this was from report number EDTS 04-2021, which came forward on October 4th. Option number 1 was restrict the land's use to commercial areas, mixed-use zones, waterfront residential, and waterfront R2. Oh, that's a different, I'm sorry. We've had 3 reports come through.
Carly's here.
This is a different one. Give me a moment.
Oh, there's Ms. Grummett. Ms. Grummett, can you assist us while the clerk is looking up the report? Or do you recall what option we're referring to in that report?
Good evening, Your Worship. Yes, option 1 was grandfathering in the 2021 licensed short-term rental premises that operated with more than 3 bedrooms and were licensees in good standing. So it was relating to options for short-term rentals with more than 3 bedrooms.
With more than 3 bedrooms? Yes. Right. And looking at section 4.7, how does that read to you? If you've been in violation of any of the rules in the previous year, are you taken out of the queue and have to wait your turn, or not?
I think it's something that we would need direction on. I'm of the opinion that if you're not at that threshold of 15 demerit points, then I would think that you should be allowed to renew your license.
So it doesn't say you can't renew your license. It says that you'd be given the first opportunity to renew your license. So that's the issue about whether you're I guess on this one, whether you can be first in line or not. As long as there's a moratorium, it doesn't make much difference because you're the only ones that can apply. I'm going to entertain a motion Councillor Noyes, if you can tell me what you're thinking in terms of how you would amend Section 4.7 of this bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I think it can be a simple amendment. Basically, we can keep the wording, all rules, and then in brackets, which basically says you cannot have more than 5 demerit points.
So that's not all rules then, because if you've got demerit points, you've actually broken at least one rule.
Yes.
So-
Or then change it to has complied.
How about all rules in brackets, no violations in brackets?
Again, I think the discussion was if somebody just left a garbage lid off their can, then does that really kind of throw them out of the queue? That's why we came up with the 5, saying, okay, we looked at the list and what 5 would get you, and we thought they were reasonable, like, the guest is noisy or something like that. That 5 would be a reasonable exception. They would still be considered following the rules, so to speak, but anything over 5, the infractions would be a little bit greater, or repeating lesser whatever. But that's how we came up with the 5. I know we voted on it. I don't know where it landed up, but
Okay, so you're suggesting that there would be an amendment so that after the words "with all rules" in brackets, less than 5 demerit points. Those words would be in brackets.
yes, something like that. That's from a legal. I don't know if and or whatever would work, but yeah, that I think it's important that someone who has 14 demerit points not be grandfathered in.
Well, so the 14, if you had 14 demerit points, you wouldn't qualify first in line to get your license renewed if there was a line. As long as there's a moratorium, there is no line. There's only the people that can apply for the license are the people who already have a license. So this wouldn't prevent them from getting a license. It just prevents them from being first in line. Once the moratorium is lifted, the significance of this is just because you have a license doesn't mean you're first in line or you have the first opportunity if your amendment was to be adopted, if you've got 6 demerit points or more. You wouldn't be first in line. You'd have to wait. You could still apply for a license if there were only 245 people who had applied. You happen to be the 246th. You could still apply. You just wouldn't get the first opportunity.
And I can appreciate that. Technically, then you don't even need 4.7.
Yeah, you need 4.7. You only need 4.7 once the moratorium is lifted.
So then this bylaw, so if we put it in here now, then it'll be in there when the moratorium is lifted. If we need this bylaw now, we need 4.7 now, even though it doesn't, like you said, there's 250, and even if you don't get the grandfathered in, you still have every opportunity of applying because there's not going to be any rush on it. So I would still put in the demerit points, 5, so that it's clear down the road that what we meant by following the rules, that we're not going to, okay, if you have 14.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So we've got it. So after the words "with all rules" in brackets would be the words less than, meaning less than 5 demerit points.
Yeah.
I guess maybe it should say meaning 5 or less.
Yes.
Yeah, demerit points. Councillor Dubanow?
I'd be happy to second this, and I have a quick comment about it as well if
Go ahead.
If Councillor, okay. Yeah, I appreciate where Councillor Noyes is coming from. I remember this discussion when it originally came up, and I was in favor of this. I think this year, because the moratorium is extending into 2022 due to our deferring the report that we had this evening. This wouldn't apply this year, is my understanding, because everyone is going to have first crack at it, because we're not going to run into the additional amounts. It's not going to be an issue. I foresee this potentially being an issue in 2023 if we continue to have that cap where we have our existing operators and that we give them an opportunity, so long as they have 5 or less demerit points, then they would have first crack at it once the moratorium is lifted, but assuming we still have a hard cap on the number of licenses that we issue. That's my understanding of how this would apply. And I'm in favor of this. I think, you leave a garbage can lid off, that's a couple demerit points, you rectify that. I recall from the discussion, speaking with Ms. Dolch and Ms. Grummett, when we dealt with this previously, I think there was only 2 or 3 short-term rentals that exceeded 5. And it was 9, okay. Yeah, Councillor Noyes corrected me, it was 9. It was a very small number out of the 200 plus we have. So I think this kind of weeds the problems out versus the ones that just have minor infractions. So I'm in favor of this. I'm happy to second it, and I'm going to support it.
Okay, so there's an amendment on the floor. To be clear, so the last line of section 4.7 says license holder has complied with all rules. The amendment would be in brackets, meaning 5 or less demerit points, end brackets, during the previous year. Is everyone clear on the amendment? Madam Clerk, you've got the amendment. Are there any other questions or comments with respect to the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? Okay, that carries. So anything further, Councillor Noyes, on the bylaw?
Nothing further.
Any other questions or comments on the bylaw? All those in favor of the bylaw as amended? That is carried unanimously. So then that takes us to third and final. Were we on third and final reading? Councillor Noyes, third and final reading.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow that bylaw number 154, 2021 as amended is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the bylaw as amended, none opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to Councillor Zanko, first and second reading of the confirmatory bylaw.
Yes, thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that bylaw number 163-2021 to confirm the actions of council at its council and committee meeting held on December 6, 2021, council and budget committee meeting number 2 held on December 8, 2021, and its council meeting held on December 13, 2021 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? No one opposed, that is carried. Councillor Lubberts, third and final reading for the confirmatory bylaw. Do you have that there?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I'll need a seconder.
Councillor McDermott.
Yeah, thank you very much. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott. The bylaw number 163-2021 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Scheduling of meetings, Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The Fort Erie Public Library Board is going to have their last meeting of 2021 on Tuesday, December 21st at 4 p.m. It's going to be at the Centennial branch of the library, and I'm guessing I'm probably going to be the guy who gets to dress up as Santa Claus.
So I'm not going to make any comment on that. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. On December the 15th, the Fort Erie non-for-profit housing is going to have a meeting at noon at a restaurant, and I can't remember the name of the restaurant. It's our Christmas meeting.
Good, thank you. I think it'd be a good look. Santa Claus would be a good look for you, Councillor Dubanow. Any other meetings? There is a diversity and Inclusion Coalition meeting on Wednesday, December the 15th at 1 p.m. That is by Zoom. And If there are no other meetings, I just want to wish each and every one of you Merry Christmas and a happy, healthy, safe holiday. And I want to extend that to all members of staff. It's, almost the end of 2 years of extraordinary living. So hopefully the new year will bring lots of positive changes. And I wish all of you and your families a wonderful holiday. Councillor Dubanow, interestingly enough, you have the resolution to adjourn.
I do, Your Worship. And thank you very much for your comments, by the way. I wish everyone a Merry Christmas as well. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that Council adjourns at 7:50 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of Council on January 17th, 2022.
Who would have thought? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. Merry Christmas, everyone.